And here we have part 2 of 10 need-to-knows about game marketing. Community. In video games, or some kinds of video games, not really mobile games, you can build up and rely on a community that forms around your game. This starts with Kickstarter or Indiegogo if you use them. But it's a case where you can talk about your game for a long time before it's actually published and try to build up interest in it. It's time consuming. On the other hand, don't you want to hear what fans have to say about your game, what they like and don't like? There's an opposite point of view in video games that fans are now quote unquote worthless. That is, you can't afford to spend time or money on them because it's so hard to make a profit. Now, even in tabletop games, you can build up a community. You can do it through Board Game Geek or otherwise. Saturation of the game market in general is a problem. Self-publishing has become easier, especially in video games. So more and more game titles are published every year. The same thing happens in books. Even if the overall market is getting larger, it's divided among so many items that each piece of the pie is getting smaller. So my book publisher publishes more books each year, but sells fewer copies of each individual book. There's only so much money for people to spend, and as there are more and more choices, each individual choice is likely to get less and less. It's also true that game markets tend to be hit driven, so a few games make a lot of money and there's even less money left for everybody else. And of course, in the saturation of the game market, we run into problems of discoverability. There are so many games that nobody's heard of your game, or almost nobody, and if they haven't heard of it, they can't play it, they can't buy it. Nothing's going to change this. It's not suddenly going to become the case that self-publishing becomes harder. So this is here to stay. Now, social media marketing is important in games. People expect to hear about games on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, Tumblr, and so forth. Word of mouth is important. As I write in the middle of 2015, I have over 400 followers each on Twitter and YouTube, and that's not nearly enough, and I've been working on it for years. Probably building up a good email list is the surest way, or at least the least unlikely way, to successfully market games. But to build up an email list, you've got to get in touch with people, you've got to work with MailChimp or whatever. It's a lot of work. Social media marketing of any kind is a lot of work. In digital or electronic games, we have a big problem. And that's also true in books and film and music, any electronic media. The internet and World Wide Web have schooled people to expect that any kind of digital information will be free. You can go out on the internet and find out all kinds of things for free. Also, electronic media is easily pirated, that is, illegally copied. So those who sell video games are tempted to lower their prices to get one more sale, because it costs them nothing to make another copy to be sold. And it's better to sell something for a little bit than to have somebody pirate it for nothing. Now, there's a big contrast here with tabletop games, because in tabletop games prices have not fallen because it costs a lot of money to make another copy. In any situation where some sellers will nearly give away their items, games or whatever, then the prices for all are going to tend to fall. Finally, some markets are just very limited. No matter how hard you try, you're not going to get much joy out of it, most likely. Mobile video games is one of those markets. There are 500 plus new ones on the Apple Store alone every day. So the median sales of a video game on the Apple Store are about $500. Now that's not going to pay for much. That's just the sales, the revenue. Another market that's very difficult is console games because it requires an enormous amount of money to get into it. It takes hundreds of man-years to make a console game. It takes millions of dollars to advertise them. So unless you have a vast sum of money, you can't get into console games, and then you're subject to the old joke, how do you make a small fortune in the game industry? Start with a large fortune. Tabletop role-playing games are a problem. It's a very small market to begin with. Surprisingly small, given the amount of noise that RPG fans make. And there's a lot of competition owing to crowdsourcing, people giving away their stuff, people selling it really cheap in PDF form. And so, aside from the big boys, it's hard to sell more than 500 to 1,000 copies of a rule book. And those are the core rules to a game. Finally, there's collectible games such as collectible card games. People see Magic the Gathering, which makes vast amounts of money, and think, oh, I want to do that. But consumers are onto that scheme. They'll do it for Magic, but they won't do it for other games. And shop owners know this. Also, it costs millions to get into the CCG market because you've got to spend money giving the game away to start with. You've got to spend a lot of money supporting organized play. You've got to advertise. So only a large company can even contemplate trying to compete in the collectible card game market. An individual designer, forget about it. I will discuss many of these topics at greater length in my course Succeeding as a Game Designer, which probably won't open until 2016, if then. But I am gradually working on it. If you want more information about my courses and discounts, go to pulseforgames.com.